I think. Let me make sure. Are the seconds going by? Yeah, they are. Okay, we're getting ready to go, and this is going to be quite a chat. I have a feeling, although we haven't really yet. We just kind of touched on things before taping. But I'm chatting with composer Sarah Wallin Huff, and we're going to talk about your 2023 Navona CD release. Thank you, Parma. Thank you, Navona. Thank you, all of you wonderful people out there that put these kind of packages together. Just a quick aside about Parma, including everything that we need as critics, really, somewhat truncated, makes perfect sense, but up on a website. And very few other companies do this, and I just think it's fabulous. I've seen your interview, or I've read your interview, I should say, with Parma, and we're going to talk about your 2023 Navona CD release of contemporary classical chamber works, and it's an album for diverse instrumental combinations. So for heaven's sakes out there in what do we call that, in faculty land, give a listen. Anyway, the CD is called Shards. Do not run away in the night and be afraid. I'm still not quite sure what Shards means now that I know you better, but it's a wonderful album of very interesting and very accessible, if I may say so, and I think it's perfectly okay to say so. Mm-hmm. Here, just a sampling. Air of Grievances for viola, violin, flute. Lovely. The flute I wondered about. Those are pretty heavy instruments, and the balancing and everything is wonderful in terms of your compositional skills. Dodo Funky. Let me say that once more. Dodo Funky for piano.
Dodeca Funky, yep.
And it is cute. Did I miss one? Dodeca Funky. Anyway, it's cute, I think I can say. It's fun, it's wonderful, and it's a lovely, wonderful, very fascinating piano piece. Audiences would love it, I think. Of Roses and Lilies. This one's a little complex for soprano, piano, soprano recorder, nice colors, nice idea. Mm-hmm. English horn, very interesting. And women's chorus. I mean, not since Holst have I heard women's chorus used in this way. Oh, I'm downtown. There's an emergency passing by. Wabi Sabi. It's in 3 movements. Juventus, the new music ensemble, performs it. This is a string quartet, so 4 players of the Juventus ensemble. I hope I'm pronouncing that right since I live in California. 3 movements: emergence, evolution, entropy. Very, very interesting, and maybe even kind of the heart of who you might be. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm trying to play it safe. The next piece, Nevermore, for viola and piano. An absolutely gorgeous, wonderful 3-movement sonata for viola and piano. The movements, The Raven, Annabelle Lee, The Telltale Heart. And I love Poe. What a genius. What a genius. So I'm glad you have created this wonderful, wonderful piece for viola and piano. And I mean by that, again, your compositional skills. The way you use these. Didn't you play viola? I thought I read somewhere. Were you a violist?
I double on viola. I feel more comfortable on violin, but I can pick up a viola if I need to.
Okay, so you got all that stuff, under your fingernails, so to say. And then the last piece, wonderful piece for orchestra, the Dark Glass Symphonia. Gives me shivers, but it's wonderful. And with the little subtitle, if I'm reading it correctly, We See Through a Glass Darkly, for orchestra from 2017. Wonderful piece, all performed by wonderful people. And I guess I'll ask you as we get further into it a little bit to tell me some of these players. There are a lot to get through and tell me some stories. So now about Sarah Wallin Huff, music lecturer at California Polytechnic University, Pomona, very nearby. How'd you do in the rains? You okay?
Yeah, we're doing okay. We're still dealing with it.
You looked toward the sandbags. I had the funny feeling. And you're teaching, this is very interesting, the history of technology in music. So therefore, I read that and I thought, wow, I'm going to get into some kind of crazy techno stuff and loops and all kinds of good stuff. No. And you've published a textbook on this subject. You got your master's degree in composition at Claremont Graduate University in 2008. You were professor of composition and advanced theory as well, conductor of the chamber ensemble. That's interesting. I think that helps me understand why you know how to write so well. When you hear it, when you're a conductor,
Mhm.
You know, it's there. Let's see, what have I missed out? Masters University of Santa Clara from 2012 to 2016.
Mhm.
You know, and you're a gigger around LA, I presume.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
all that good stuff. By the way, are you in Santa Clarita now, or
No,
where? You're in LA
we
now?
were there for like 5 years, but now we've moved to Upland, so just near Ontario.
Is that better or worse? I can't remember.
It's well, it's much more affordable, and
Oh,
but
really?
it's also very peaceful here. It's a very small town kind of vibe,
Nice,
so
nice.
it's
Because
nice.
of
Yeah.
course, what I remember, as I told you off camera, is the gorgeous, huge, massive monolith of the
Yes.
California Institute of the Arts was built, of course, on an apocalypse, not an apocalypse, although sometimes it might be thought of that, but an acropolis. That was the word I was looking for.
Hmm.
Above Santa Clarita.
Yeah.
So I remember, you know, as a student at Cal Arts, kind of, you know, going, eh.
Yeah.
Because it was in those days it was a tiny little town. It's now whatever 187,000 zillion people.
It's growing. Yeah.
Here now, I'm not quite sure. Um, well, you really say it right out right, and I just want to deal with this a little bit before I get to where you know I'm going, because we all know uh, people with autism.
Hmm.
That's the word. It's not a dirty word, but I was trying to
Mm-mm.
figure out a way to get there. And what I have found in my experience with people, and you know, autism is here, there, everywhere in various variations. You're going to speak to it, I think, in a bit.
Hmm.
But the people that I have known with autism, some people have had troubles. Uh,
Hmm.
Others have been really, really talented and clever and innovative. And what I guess I'm kind of getting at, not that I you know, going, you're one of the good ones or anything stupid like that. But what I'm trying to say is that autism is not a deficit.
Mm-mm.
Okay,
It's yeah. It's a difference. It's a difference.
thank you. That's
Yeah.
better. Better.
Hmm.
Okay. Because I too, like most of, especially like with dyslexia, in
Hmm.
the 70s, we all thought people with dyslexia were just lazy.
Yeah.
Just didn't want to do a job. Well, they couldn't cope. They couldn't read. Everything was backwards. My oldest nephew was dyslexic, and so
Hmm.
is. Sorry, um, and so on. So I just want everybody to understand that there's something very interesting. And where are you in the autism spectrum? Can I ask that question?
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
of course you're clearly under great control. I mean, you
Well,
have mastered the magic of autism, huh? Get
what's
me out of
funny
this,
about
please.
yeah, well, what's funny about that is I've actually only just in the past year really got confirmation. I'm
Oh,
still don't
interesting.
have yeah, I still don't have an official diagnosis because that's
Ah,
a whole other bag of worms for adult diagnosis and it costs thousands of dollars and
uh-huh.
some doctors still don't believe that women have it. So,
Sure.
but just taking several screening tests, I've taken about 5 of the clinical screening tests, and they all point very highly to autism. And thinking about my experiences growing up, it really makes a lot of
That's what I
sense.
was going to ask you next, because
Yeah.
you must have known, you know, that
Oh,
something
yeah.
was different.
So, yeah, I
Can
thought
you give us
something
an
was
example or
always,
two, you know, of when you were a
yeah,
kid? Because
yeah.
that's what
Well,
I remember is the kids that I've known have various
yeah,
levels of autism.
definitely. Emotional dysregulation is still difficult where, well, and for
What does
me,
that mean?
because I,
Kind of triggered emotional response to things?
yeah,
Yeah.
like there's a famous phrase that you don't have enough spoons. So the phrase means basically like I only have so many ways of coping with life, and when I'm out of those ways, I have to take a nap. I have to go to
Me
the
too.
corner for a second. Yeah. And for different people there's different levels of that. And growing up with a family who expected me to be normal, I got really good at masking. I got really good at holding it all in, but then I'd get home and just like collapse. Didn't want to do my homework. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to do anything except just sit there after school. Unfortunately, I had to keep pushing through, um, and so I just got used to doing that, hiding who I really was.
Well,
Um,
as you know, we
for
talked. I'm very openly
yeah,
gay, and I have the same
exactly.
thing. And what we're getting to, the bottom line is, you have to be who you are. To keep it, to
Exactly.
keep these things secret, or to try and work around who you are, is exhausting, as you said, and just mentally,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
deconstruct.
I did actually get a diagnosis like 15 years ago for anxiety disorder. And what I've discovered since then is that it is a part of the autism masking. Just I had been masking for 40 years. And so that just built up a lot of anxiety in me for everything, you
Sure.
know. But now that I'm this past year starting to learn who I am and learn what my triggers are, I am very sensitive to sound, ironically enough. Disorganized sound, I really have a hard time handling with, but music is organized sounds. So for me,
Fascinating.
my brain likes it, you know?
Fascinating. That's fascinating.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm just learning a lot more about myself and how my brain works, and that it's okay that my brain has trouble where other people seem to have things worked out, you know, and that's okay. It's just a
But as
difference, a different,
usual, you see, if you will, with your brain things that we don't, and so on. You know, I mean, that's the
yeah,
beauty of all, for all of us.
yeah,
That's the tremendous beauty of diversity. Um, so you know, I just think it's wonderful, frankly.
yeah.
Now let's deal with the other one, and then we'll go on. And it's important this other moment,
Sure.
which is because you have a piece that I'm going to ask you to speak about, and I want
Hmm.
you have made it very. Let's talk about ancients,
Hmm.
and let me do my shtick first. By the way, you know I'm over it kind of now. What I mean is I just don't do certain things that I used to do when I was in my 20s and 30s.
Right.
But tarot, the whole thing, took it very very seriously, as everyone should. This is psycho messaging to ourselves
Hmm.
from our brains. I mean, give me a break. It
Yeah.
is not random. It's pure messaging
Mm-mm.
to ourselves, tarot and I Ching and all the rest of it. And I love traditions that have been there for 8,000 years. How can the formula was achieved in 8,000 BC. How can anyone dare to say, oh, it's just bogus, and so on? Astronomy,
Yeah.
astrology,
Yeah.
and I use the two, astronomy and astrology, because they are paired, certainly
Hmm.
in the lives of the ancients, if you will, and also that we're only just beginning to uncover the truths about who we are, where we came from, and all the rest.
Yeah.
Do you need to do any comments on that? We're going to talk about it because you do this formula for a piece with tarot
Yeah.
cards that drives me crazy, but also told me, speaking of what you had spoken to uh, just a moment ago, and slap me around if I'm wrong, but something about when you get kind of when one gets kind of focused. Am I close here? The focus
Hmm.
becomes quite extravagant. And was that
Oh
a
yeah.
case for you? You really got into constructing this piece around tarot
Oh
throws, if
yeah.
you will.
I tend to this tends to be a theme that I if I hit on something that's been very useful for me, mentally and psychologically, spiritually, I tend to write a piece about it.
Oh,
So that's what
perfect.
the oracle tended to be. Tarot I fell onto as a way to deal with my anxiety. And it really, luckily, I had a therapist at the time who was open to the idea of me exploring my subconscious through the tarot cards. So,
Really. That's a kind of a breakthrough, frankly.
yeah,
You know,
definitely,
to
definitely.
be lucky enough to run into a more open-minded therapist, frankly.
They're
Uh,
out there. Yeah.
and then the other thing is that you know, and you know where we're going here too. But this idea, it's so important. We've really touched on it, but I want to make sure you will say everything you need to say about it. And then we're going to
Hmm.
get to the music, which says everything you want to say about it. It's about this idea of finding oneself, of
Yeah.
relishing in these discoveries. And
Hmm.
so can you give me I guess what I'm curious about right off the top of my head here is there is there any? Can you give me a topography of when, where, if even you feel now like who you are? You know what I mean? What's the
Hmm.
trajectory? Where did you arrive? Have you arrived yet at a certain
Yeah.
piece?
Um, well, definitely starting roughly a little less than a year ago when I finally did those screenings for autism, like is when everything really started clicking. And I did a lot of reading and researching and finding others like me, you know, and it just helped click, you know, it helped me make sense of who I am and why I am the way I am. So often, especially throughout my whole life, I would be upset that I didn't seem to be like everybody else. Even as a teacher, I mean, one of my favorite compliments from a student of mine was, "I'm the quirkiest teacher on campus." And I wear that like a badge. I don't
Right.
teach like other teachers teach. I don't think like other people think. And I've learned that that's okay. There's nothing wrong with me. That diversity is a great thing. So,
Okay. And now we're going to deal with the product of your satisfactions. Although this is, let's see, 2023. I know these were recorded over a rather large span of time, maybe 5-6
yeah.
years or so.
Yeah, about 5 years or so. Yeah.
So in other words, I guess what now has me curious is looking back, feeling where you are feeling now. Do you see things in? We'll focus on this CD.
I do actually. Yeah. The CD actually came about simply by virtue of the way the economy works in the music recording industry and classical music, etc., where we just recorded piece by piece by piece as we could, and then finally had enough and say, "Hey, let's put together an album,"
And then let's figure out how to pay for it. That's the
yeah,
other,
exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
It's one of those things. Yeah. Everybody that's watching this knows all about this. It's not like it happens.
Yeah, exactly. But now, like I said, especially after these past several months, I look at the CD and I do really see it as if it's sort of a culmination of my past 15 years or so. Because all the pieces have been written. I think the earliest one was, well, I think Roses and Lilies was what like 2012 or something like that. 2013 maybe.
Oh, really? Well, we'll find out.
I don't
as
remember.
we go through. Yeah, I've kind of forgotten too. I'm just kind of browsing through. So it's a lovely overview of.
Yeah,
you.
it really
That's
is.
the whole point, really. Anyway.
It really is.
Why
In fact,
did you choose the word shards?
Actually, I love this. My husband picked it. He actually made up the title Air Grievances too. He comes up with all these great titles.
That's nice. I like that.
But we thought about shards because there are pieces like Dark Glass Symphonia, so glass and breaking. Wabi Sabi is sort of like the fractal nature of life, and so you see shards of glass reflecting different things. Basically, it's supposed to be sort of the fragmentations of personality and life and spirituality.
Okay.
They all kind of
that's a good definition here. I was expecting as I told you, I was expecting a wild ride. And by the way, just so everybody knows, it isn't. It's absolutely a magnificent recording of simply superb music. This is what just blew me away. Quote, "I have come to realize, as we just discussed, I've come to realize that I fall within that autistic spectrum. Validating your long-standing suspicions. In a way, this text that's on your CD tells us how fresh the CD is as well. So it's been put together, you've done that, it's been 5 years, you're there, and then it's like, son of a gun. Now see what I mean? It's great. Let's see, what else did I want to say? One inherent trait I possess is finding my emotional fulfillment through the active, creative manipulation of musical patterns. And this fascinates me. I'm not a fix the watch kind of guy. I don't get into the little details. I'm the conductor. I want the big pastel, horses crossing the plains or something. Yeah. So does that speak to your autism in a way? The focus on
I think so.
Minutia.
The hyperfixation. I mean, there are times when I'm working on a piece that if my husband wasn't there to remind me, I'd forget to eat. I'll just be like focused on these patterns and what else can I do with them? And that sounds really cool. Let me try this. And
let's see. And you say I'm not seeking to impose specific emotions on listeners. This I think is very important, but rather to facilitate a deeper connection with their inner selves. Now I'm not quite sure what kind of a labyrinth you just created with those words. I'm not seeking to impose specific emotions on listeners. Yet I would like them to get in touch with their deeper, see what I mean? So you're clever, aren't you?
Well, that's a question I get a lot is, well, how do you want the audience to feel? Even composition teachers, how do you want them to feel? And I think that's another part of my autism. I relate to emotions differently than some other people do, from what I can tell. For me, the emotion and joy comes from the patterns. And so that's what it is for me. It can be a completely atonal piece, and if the patterns are cool, then I'm getting such delight out of it. Uh, but for other people, that might not be the case, and I totally recognize that. So I'm hoping through my music, even though I might find joy in places they won't, that they'll still find something that they can resonate with.
Oh, that was very well sprach. And I can only agree with you because, as I think I mentioned to you and probably everybody else, and probably about 3 times already by now, but that was the shocker to me. This music is just simply gorgeous. And I was
Thank
expecting
you.
a few more shards, if you will. I was expecting something a little more fractious, if you will. Okay, let's get going because I think that's the only way to go through here. And some of these, I'm going to, depending on time, how we're doing, I may pass on one or two,
Sure.
but let's just here's what I do. I put on, I almost said I put down the tone arm on
Put the
the
needle
LP,
down, right? Yeah.
but the first piece on the CD is "Air of Grievances." I love the spelling. I presume that's clever, and awfully medieval or something.
Yep.
It's for viola, violin, and flute. It's from 2020. So that's a bad year. That's
hence,
right.
Hence the grievances, yeah.
Hence the grievances is right.
Yeah.
Composed during the worldwide COVID epidemic. And you and I have talked about it. People are not yet clear how profoundly we as a planet of human beings and animals have been affected. This is going to take another half dozen years if we don't have World War III somewhere in between to sort itself out. So it's this was a big thing, and the biggest thing in my life maybe to go through. So Air of Grievances, and you set us up with all this frustrations, fears, sorrow, and anger, and I'm going, oh, can't wait, and I put it on, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I don't get it, totally not expecting. Here are my stream of consciousness notes. Totally not expecting such tonality, if you will. It's wonderful already, tense, beautifully crafted, thoroughly contemporarily classical. I mean, it's totally accessible, and I almost want to spit when I say that word, but I think it's okay now to use that to create accessible music. Things get a little crazy and frustrated. You mentioned in your program notes. Let me see if I can find a juicy bit. Well, I mentioned this fierce work. That'll do. So there's the frustration, and you describe it very well. Although in my case, I just went comatose and just stared out the windows for 2 years and allowed the checks to come in because I was a freelancer, unemployed, and boy, the money was better than I've ever received. Thank you, Uncle Sam. But so I didn't really experience a whole lot of frustration. I just sort of couldn't believe what was going on for about 2 years. Let's see, anything else? Why don't you go ahead? Give me. The narrative is almost background to the otherwise fascinating work itself. In other words, there is a narrative to this piece, Air of Grievances, but I think it is much more than the sum of its narrative, is what I'm trying to say. Tonalities are altogether satisfying throughout the piece. Go, give me an overview. What was this about for you?
Well, during the lockdowns, for me, it was frustrating. Well, because giving 3-hour lectures on Zoom, I never want to do that again. Oh my gosh. Not being able to see anybody, not being able to see family, that was really frustrating. But at the same time, because I wasn't able to play live concerts like I had been, it gave me a chance to sit down and really think about who I am. Up until that point, it was very much, I'm a major violinist and a composer and a teacher all at once.
And I do viola. Don't forget viola.
And viola too. Yes, I love the viola. But then I came to realize I really much prefer writing and recording. So I allowed myself to let go of the things that maybe didn't bring me quite as much joy. So when things did open back up, I'm being more careful to balance my life out for what really brings me more joy and less stress, hopefully. But that's what that piece really sort of represented. It was frustrating, it was lonely, I was angry at the world. But at the same time, there was some beauty in there and some peace. And I just love the interaction of the 3 parts. They're all 3 very independent, but they speak together. And sometimes they're arguing with each other, but sometimes they're singing with each other and supporting each other. And I just really like that intimacy of the work.
Well, that whole narrative thing about which you're very good, the three voices having discussions between each other. But I found, and I may sound like I'm an idiot or something, but when I saw that viola, violin, flute, I told you earlier, I remember thinking, that's going to be tricky, that the flute doesn't get lost and all of that works beautifully. And that is not about, microphones. It's about the way you wrote the piece. It's the
Thank you.
craft using those three instruments so beautifully. And later you use instruments in the most magical way.
I
Anything
appreciate
else
that.
on this piece? Air of Grievances. I think
No,
pretty
I love it.
much,
We actually
dissected that.
debuted it. Yeah, we actually debuted it during the pandemic, where I recorded the violin and viola part, and then I recorded a friend of mine playing the flute part, and we just did one of those YouTube stitched videos where we stitched our videos together.
Hey, well,
So
that
we
was
call
a lesson, I suppose.
that was the thing. That was the thing. Yeah, the socially
now, oops,
distanced debut.
my turn to lose my earpiece.
It's okay.
Dodecafunky.
Dodecafunky.
Am I pronouncing it reasonably close? Dodecafunky, and of course we're playing with dodecacophony or something. You're gonna have to fill me up on that.
Dodecaphony. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, there's all this funny stuff going on. That's all inside stuff from musicians, and it's still flying over my head. It's for flute and piano from 2015. I think you mentioned this might be the earliest piece, maybe 2015, or is it? I can't remember.
I
Maybe
think that is probably the earliest. Oh,
Okay.
of Roses and Lilies, I actually wrote the original piece for voice and piano in like the early aughts. But then I went back and fleshed it out and sort of
Yeah.
made it fuller. But yeah.
So the note, the early aught, I love that. The early aught notes don't count anymore. They've been thoroughly absorbed into the.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
so Dodecafunky. For flute and piano, I want to tell everybody out there that's looking for repertoire, this is a beauty. This is a recital beauty. For flute and piano accompaniment, here we go. I think what I say, it's a terrible use of words. I'm completely incorrect. But stream of consciousness, that's my alibi. Or did you write this? A funky solo for flute with piano accompaniment, this intense and spastic work. Was that me or you?
I think it's me.
I think it was you, so it's your fault. Exploits various manipulations. Oh, here you go. Yeah, it is you. Of a 12-tone row dodecaphony, or dodecaphony. I'm supposed to be a musician, and I couldn't care less how it's pronounced, or even what it is these days. And sets the serial melody to a backdrop, etc., etc. But the point, this is why it's so cute. Of hard bop and swing and stuff. It's just a delicious piece. Hang on. Virtuosity, blah, blah, blah. Now let me throw my stream of consciousness, aggressive. It's aggressive in its funky way, I say about the opening, while the piano adds to the delightful confusion with various playful styles. Let me run down something else. A pause, and it starts to get feisty. Now, I don't know where I am in the piece, but now some casual virtuoso boogie funky, I say here. It's a delight. It's kind of a series of descriptive tableaux. Am I closer? Because I love dance. I review dance a lot, and these are like little tableaux, little scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
No, you're
Well, anyway,
spot on.
the last thing I have to say is it's wonderful to the max. Should be on programming all over the place. It's a beauty. Tell me, what do you think? What do you think of this?
I love this piece.
It just makes just a charmer.
It makes me giggle.
It's just a charmer. Beautifully.
It's so cute. Thank you.
Too, and that's again, if you'll forgive me the accessibility word. This is irresistible or something like that. But you know what I'm trying to say. This is a beauty.
I'm glad you like it.
Anything else on that one?
Yeah, that one I actually took a little bit of inspiration from Bernstein. I love. I was studying his symphony, Age of Anxiety, in grad school. Love that, and I loved how he merged. Well, he merged
By
his
the way,
modernistic.
let me just jump in because I'm a conductor. And I know all three of those symphonies very, very well. I've never conducted them because they're too hard.
They're very hard.
Jeremiah, I can conduct. That one makes sense. The Age of Anxiety for piano and orchestra is unbelievable, but it's also unbelievably difficult to conduct.
Yes.
And then Kaddish, he wrote the original and then toured all the pieces and stuff. So, but anyway, I just want to. I'm so glad somebody also has
Oh,
has
yes.
studied
I love it.
the age of anxiety. Anyway, excuse me. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, that's okay. But yeah, I really loved the idea of merging modernistic tendencies, as Bernstein would say, with jazz and other accessible popular genres. And so that's what I did with this flute piece. Is I took a 12-tone row, and it is an authentic 12-tone row, but you
Somewhere.
could say I cheated. I cheated a little bit because I used transpositions. So what I would do is it's still the same row, but I would transpose fragments of it to places that I liked it where it fit better.
Arnold is
So-
turning in his grave. And
but see,
all the others.
Stravinsky did it first, so it's blame him.
Anyway.
But yeah, but it still has the same intervallic structures. But then I back it up with that really jazzy, different, like you say, different tableaus of different jazzy styles to kind of increase
It's a great dance piece.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me in a way. It's a great piece for
Yeah,
with
that'd be
dancers,
fun.
On stage with so in other words, there's lots of possibility there. I mean, that's what is so wonderful about my experiencing all these CDs by people.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much great music out there. Okay, we're going to move on. Of Roses and Lilies. This is for soprano, piano, soprano recorder, which I don't think I hear very often used in these kind of chamber pieces, and it's a perfect color. English horn.
Mm-hmm.
What got into you? And women's chorus. And then are there strings there? I have this question.
Yeah, string orchestra.
String orchestra. Okay, because I didn't,
Yep.
I didn't see it in the brief. And it's from 2013, so we're getting closer to the bottom of the stack here.
Yeah.
But completed in 2013. Tell us about it, because it's
Yeah.
You talk.
This one's a really fascinating piece for me. Like I said, I had first written it several decades ago. And this was written
Don't
actually
be so
during...
hard on yourself. 13, 23, it's only been 10 years.
Well, no, but the original piece for
okay.
just soprano and piano was written, like I said, in the late 90s or early aughts. This was when I was still with my very Christian family.
There's
very
an interesting detail.
judgmental. Yep, there you go. Very fundamentalist, but yet evangelical. It was complicated. But so I was raised in that family, and so I fell in love with the Song of Solomon. And I thought, why don't I take snippets of the Song of Solomon and put it together as sort of a love song? And so I did, and eventually, just another 10 years or so down the road, I said, you know what, I really love this piece. I'm going to flesh it out. So I took the original, just 2 parts, and added the strings and added the color of the soprano recorder and the English horn. Added the women's chorus as sort of this almost Greek chorus-esque kind of response thing. Yeah, so it's a very different piece. It's a very dramatic kind of theater-esque, drama-esque kind of a feel.
Yeah, and you don't use the word romantic. It reeks of romanticism. I see in my notes here a rich tapestry of sound in a highly romantic tonal setting. I was not ready for that. Remember, I'm still on shards.
Yes.
So, and then I think you mentioned that this is put together as recordings from live performances, something like that.
Kind of.
There's a little distance there, but the piece is there.
Yeah. I actually, everybody don't hate on me, but I actually recorded it myself. So it's only two microphones. With the soloist Claire is one of my best friends, and she teaches at Azusa. So she was able to grab us a classroom, and so I recorded with the 2 microphones, her and another good friend of mine, the pianist Lydia. And at the time, we weren't sure if I was just going to put together a digital background to it and release it online or something. But this CD was coming toward finishing, and I was like, this would be really awesome if we could get the rest of it recorded.
Yeah.
So I took 2 more sessions. I got the strings and the winds together for 1 session.
Wow.
And then I finally got the women's chorus together for a session.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense too. Very hard undertaking just in terms of production.
It's such a good learning experience, and again, so many of my dear friends are on that recording, and it was just so special to record.
And something else, and I hope you understand what I'm saying here, because we want to get these pieces performed. I see here, it's a beauty. It's very accessible. Sorry, it doesn't sound terribly hard to put together. What do you think? Am I all wet there or what? I don't mean, the
So, no,
task of
no.
getting it, but just it seemed to just flow pretty
So
freely.
I will say here's the danger with my music, and especially with this piece, this hasn't happened before. There have been pianists who have assumed they can sight read it, and they suddenly quit because they're like, "Oh, I can't sight read this." So this is something my very first composition teacher warned me about: is that my music seems really
Oh,
easy,
I see.
but then you dig into it, and there's some little quirks in there and some tricks that you might not be expecting. So as long as you
That
look,
shouldn't be a big problem if you know what I mean,
yeah,
the right music. So
exactly,
yeah, yeah. So I think I'm okay
yeah.
in saying that. I think it's not like I didn't
It's
hear
not
anything
horrible. Yeah.
virtuosic that needed to be
Yeah.
worked on, and that is to say. This should go off the shelf and into performance and
I
rehearsal and
think so.
performance, and that's exactly right. I see nothing but college ensemble here, frankly,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
because of the difficulty of getting professionals together in that kind of complex thing, you know what I mean, the cost and everything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I found it really very very a flowing, lovely, entirely tonal journey.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
soprano recorder is charming. Your writing is absolutely first class. You handle
Thank you.
transitions of mood with smooth apple. Boy, that came out of my head. Jeez. It's a silly. Oh, and I go on and I say it's a silly word, but that's what it is. It
Yeah.
just it comes out. This one really flows. The piece soars with beauty. Your
Mhm.
compositional savvy and skill are beyond question. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Whew. Okay. The Oracle. Now I've got 101 little stars after this one, which means either that I could not figure out what your narrative was, or something. Let's see. Now this is the Oracle. It's for violin, cello, flute, and piccolo, clarinet, and piano. It's from
Hmm.
2016. Um, and you say, was constructed. Oh, this is why. This is the one, isn't it? Okay, now I'm
Yep. Yep.
beginning to remember. I'm coming out of my coma. This is the one that you can go ahead, tell us. But the bottom line is, you constructed this thing from random throws of tarot cards. Go. It's fascinating.
Exactly. Okay. So,
Eleatoric,
um,
indeed. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. I really, like I said, this was a time in my life when I had just really started to latch onto tarot as a means of exploring my own subconscious.
Which is
As a
exactly correct, by the way. Let's make sure
exactly
everybody's
what
clear.
it's
It
supposed
ain't
to
a
be.
game. It's an
No,
effort to let the
exactly.
subconscious speak to us,
Yes,
to our conscious mind.
exactly.
Yeah.
I like to think of it's like a mirror for myself. It's a way for me to talk to myself when sometimes I'm having trouble understanding my brain. So I really love tarot, and I wrote this when I first really started getting into it. And so what I did is I had an opportunity. It was like a call for scores for this ensemble, and so I was like,
Hmm.
this will be fun. Why don't I use that as an excuse to try it out? So, and I wanted to do sort of a homage to John Cage by using an aleatoric kind of method, and so tarot seemed like the perfect way to do it.
Interesting.
So I set up, I think it was 5 different spreads of 10
I
cards
remember
each.
5. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think I did like some kind of a sacred pyramid spread for each
I
of
gotcha.
those.
Gotcha.
And what I did is I assigned, you know how in tarot the different suits represent different aspects of life and personality. So you have the cups, which is emotion. You have, the pentacles. The pentacles are earth and material well-being and reality and such. So what I did is I attached each of the instruments to those suits. The violin was fire or wands. The cello was water or cups, and the clarinet was earth, and the flute, of course, was air. And then for the piano, I made the piano the tree of life itself because I like to read tarot from a Kabbalistic tree of life sort of
Now you're
interpretation.
starting to get over my head. I thought I was with you pretty well, but Kabbalistic something something and a tree of life. Go.
Yeah.
Now it's sounding extremely down in the dark basement. Go ahead.
So it's Jewish mysticism, basically.
Okay.
But
Kabbalistic, of course.
yeah, exactly. So on the tree of life, each of the cards have their place on that tree, and the higher up at the tree you are, the closer to the divine source you are. And then you travel down the tree and experience various phases of life and emotion, etc., until you get to the bottom, which is material reality. Everything you've experienced becomes real. And then you cycle back to the top, back to the divine source again. So for the piano, when I had a spread that spoke of being closer to the divine source, I had the piano playing up in its higher registers. And then as it got closer to the bottom, to the ground, the piano went down. So the higher, if you hear the piano going, noodling up really high, that's up at the divine source of things. If you hear the piano kind of in the middle, that's sort of where balance and harmony are. If the piano's down in the basement, that's down in material reality. And
If
then
not
meanwhile, you
Hades
have,
itself,
yeah, exactly.
which material reality might be, come to think of it. Anyway,
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
uh,
But yeah, and then in the meantime, you have all the other instruments that are reflecting on emotion or or
power, as you
thought
say
or
here,
power.
power
Yeah,
and character that may be interpreted uh, in
exactly.
countless ways. That's the beauty
Yeah,
of the idea of randomness. I mean, that's the whole
exactly.
beauty of the order, if you will, of
Yeah,
randomness. That
exactly.
even random events will speak to us if they're not
Exactly.
anywhere close to right. Okay, well, have I interrupted you unnecessarily? Are you
No, I think that's great.
okay? Good. Because here go my stream of consciousness notes again from today. And by the way, once in a while, I really want to play an album uh, for other people in my, over a dinner or something. This is one of them.
Oh,
What an amazing chamber piece, I say. This is
mm,
this long cello obbligato, then enter the klezmer aesthetic, I call it,
mhm,
with all of that playing. And now I understand the Kabbalistic, if you will,
mhm.
right, meaning
Yep.
to it all. But the klezmer aesthetic is clearly there. And of course, the oracle is a Jew, right? I say the oracle is a Jew? Question mark. But of course, duh. Wonderful transitional writing, and you know what I mean, making
Mhm,
segments and scenes make sense. That transition
mhm.
material is very, very important to get it right.
Oh yeah.
Then I think I'll let you talk a little bit more. Compositional savvy is top notch. I think I've been saying that. And what I mean about that is I'm listening to when I listen to pieces for the first time, brand new. I had no idea who you were. That's why I
Mhm.
contacted you, let alone your music. That's what my head is just always, it either makes sense or it doesn't. You know.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
far, I, as a guy reviewing CDs, have been extremely lucky. I mean, really lucky.
Yeah.
The talent out there is just incredible. Anyway, let's see. I'm looking for connectivity. I ask myself. Um, Quite nice slower tuning fiddle with clarinet obbligato. I can't remember quite where that is in the middle, but I guess what I'm trying to say, I don't need to babble on about this. I'll put it in the review later. But but the piece is a wonderful narrative. It's complex. It's a complex
Mhm.
narrative. Um, and as you have just described, the instruments are characters. Have I got that reasonably clear?
I'm sorry, they're what?
Are the instruments individual characters in this narrative?
They
Kind of.
are
I'm thinking of the
the suits.
clarinet, for
They're
example.
the suits of the cards, but they do have they evoke their sort of certain characteristics about it.
Okay, that's much more complex. Thank you.
Yeah.
That clarifies somehow the dumb question I was asking. Let's see, Bob. It's just that this is quite a journey. This piece is
Mhm. Mhm.
quite a journey. So and then I say a jaunty section now as coda. I
Mhm.
presume that's a coda
Yeah.
with a silly fun ending.
I love it. I love it.
How can you get any more, any better than that? Okay, next is Wabi Sabi, and I see
Mhm.
I've written it twice. I wonder if that's an accident or not. Is it just Wabi Sabi?
Mhm.
It
That's
is in
it.
three movements. You're going to tell us now. Wait a minute, may already have it. The aesthetic and metaphysical ideals that Japanese Wabi Sabi encapsulates. Tell us about
Mhm.
Wabi Sabi.
Yeah.
Is it
Um,
animist or something? Is it part of their religion? Animist religion? Do you have any idea?
it can be. It's it starts trying to remember where it historically started. It actually started with monochromatic Chinese drawings, and then the Japanese sort of took that ideal and enhanced it. A lot of people think of a Zen garden when they think of
I
wabi
see what
sabi.
you mean. Yeah, now I understand exactly what you mean.
Yeah,
Wabi Sabi.
but
Even the
as
sketches, even the artwork are
yeah,
strokes. Just very
exactly.
spare strokes. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
the tea ceremony. Everything about that ceremony is part of their wabi sabi aesthetic and metaphysical ideals.
Thanks.
Um,
I'm gonna
yeah,
try. I'm gonna try and remember this for
yeah.
later at parties. Well,
There you go.
it's my
Yeah.
wabi-sabi nature. Anyway,
There you
go
go.
ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, simplicity is a major part of it, but it goes beyond that. And this is what the string quartet throughout the three movements sort of encapsulates, is that the beginning that in the West, the idea of nothing is like zero. There's nothing there. It's very stark. But in wabi sabi ideas, nothing is full of potential. There's a lot that could be there but isn't there yet. And so
I'm gonna faint. That's so profound. Go ahead.
yeah, exactly. And then you go through. So that's how the beginning of the first movement starts. Are sort of these random particles where the players can choose how they want to play it. So there's a lot
Oh,
of
really?
yeah.
Wait a minute. Make sure I understand that we're talking about the first movement,
Yeah,
emergence. Now,
emergence.
what
Yeah.
have you just said? That the players have some choice in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have
Oh,
choice. So each of them has. I can send you the score if you like, and you can take a look at that.
well,
But each
if you want to, I'd be thrilled. PDF or something.
sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not a big deal. Yeah, love to see.
Yeah. So each of the players have a collection of notes that they can choose from to play. And they do it in different ways. Like the cello trills all their notes, but they can choose how they want to trill it and how fast they want to trill it and when they want to come in, and things like that. Until they finally come together in the middle of the first movement, and it sort of builds from there. So the idea is like that of creation, of these particles coming into space
Like it.
and slowly merging
Right.
together to become something.
And by the way,
And that,
homage to Cage. This sounds like an homage to Stockhausen.
yeah, absolutely, Another great.
Of
I love him.
sorts. But that's
Yeah.
distance. These distant sounds. I remember performance. Stockhausen.
Mhm.
Then it all comes together. At
Then
some
it all
point.
comes together.
Anyway,
Yeah.
wonderful.
And then
Go ahead. Yeah.
and then evolution is it's intentionally a short little 2-minute burst, because that's where everything is kind of blocked in. This is evolution. This is the cells are coming together and creating fish that are coming out of the water and becoming man,
Alive with
etc.
possibility, you say.
Alive with possibility. Yeah.
Nothingness itself.
Yeah, exactly. And then it gives way to entropy. And entropy starts with a very strict structure. Funnily enough, I wasn't sure compositionally how I wanted to go about the third movement, but I was in the middle of teaching about isorhythm in one of my classes. So I'm like, hey, I could do isorhythm with this. That'd be fun. So it starts out very strict, but then gets really complex and starts falling apart. And again, that's the idea of returning back to nothingness. Everything's falling apart. And that's the idea of that. The idea that you sometimes the best course of action is to decide to do nothing, or you got to know when to decide to do something and when not to, is kind of the idea.
Now, what you have just told me is what I did or did not hear, because I think you have just described an exact arc.
It comes back to
the bits and pieces, they come together, and then that at the end, I'll see later when I read my so-called stream of consciousness things whether I got there. But let's see, what have I got from your own notes? What I love is, because I have a history. I'm now old enough that I remember the days in the 60s and 70s where Be Here Now, Ram Dass's book, which I read. And by the way, that was the most important message I have ever read in my whole life. Be here now. We always forget. We have to kind of make ourselves remember. Just be here in the moment right now.
Yeah, so that's all we have.
I like that very much about the piece. Now let's see what I have to say about it. I'm looking at emergence. The first movement builds quite satisfyingly. The construct is fascinating and sensible to the intellect, I say to myself. Whatever that means. The sustained moment, I don't need to describe. I'll do this in the program note, but I'm just seeing if I find anything else here, because I have a little method. But and by the way, I should mention this is Juventus, the New York City based, I think. I can't remember.
I think so.
And they, appear on recordings and whatnot and give concerts in various combinations. And in this case, it's a string quartet of Juventus members. Brilliant, wonderful performance. But anyway, so I think I've done that. But that's about emergence. And of course, if you don't get it off the ground intellectually from the beginning, you're in trouble. So I'm glad I seem to approve that you're getting there. Okay, evolution. I love this. I call it a flowing sea sort of opening.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, or whatever that vibe. It could be anything. Forget sea,
Yeah.
but whatever that undulating, flowing thing
Mm-hmm.
is that's so mesmerizing.
Yeah.
Again, wonderful quartet writing. Uh, I'm going to have to stop using this word accessible, but that's the whole idea to get these
Yeah.
performed, and that's exactly to be well written and also
Mm-hmm.
be a happy time for an audience. Give me a break.
Yeah. I know, right?
Okay. Good. Let's see, and here's the thing about evolution, which makes perfect sense. Duh. What my notes are that and utterly accessible to the listener, though the subject matter. One listening, but I think I got it. Though the subject matter may have sub-basements.
Mm-hmm.
Now a walking cello pits bit, that walking cello thing, it's wonderful to keep the piece moving and energetic. Quite a narrative. Then there's a rather strident section, so on and so forth. But I think that's what I loved about what I think I was hearing, which is maybe something about you were telling us other things. Let's stop right there and tell me if I'm all wet or if you're going to go along with this nonsense or what.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, the little metronome marking I have in the second movement is like dancing molecules.
Oh.
So kind of the spinning, whirling.
I may have to dream about that tonight. Okay, so I think we're done with that. And then the third movement, if you will, entropy.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a nice. I hear a little I wrote down the stream of consciousness thing, fugato. You know what I mean? Not quite. That opening is it a genuine? It isn't, but it's a fugato, right? Or fugato or something. Huh?
It starts out exactly as a canon, but then what happens is each time the line comes back, I either put it in diminution or augmentation. So I like I said, if you see the score, I start doing crazy little sub meters within each of the bars just to help the players keep time with each other. But yeah, that's part of the unraveling part. Is they start very much together, and then they start in like ratios of 2 to 1 or 1 to 2. But then they start getting into weird ratios.
Let's see, because I think I wondered about those asymmetrical collisions, if that makes any sense. Let's see. A slightly dysfunctional, intentional, I say, section of. I'm toward the end here of Pitz's. Now I don't know quite what that means. Maybe that's that area where the meters get kind of confused, where it's slightly dysfunctional, but it's clearly intentional.
Well, the very ending, I go back to the beginning idea where each player has a selection of notes they can pitch whenever they want to.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That explains it to me now.
So each performance should be a little different than each other.
So in other words, at the end of entropy, they go back to this idea, and they can even change their mind about the little exit. Love it.
Exactly.
Stockhausen. He's smiling. Okay. Now this is really. Hang on, I want to make sure because I think there's something. Well, we can't. We'll talk about it, but this next. This Nevermore. This major sonata, I think, for viola and piano from 2019 to 2021. We all know what that was about. But Nevermore for viola and piano. Also a little subtitle of a Gothic suite, which is so delightful, is an absolutely magnificent sonata for viola and piano. It's just absolutely, and it's so American because we're talking about Edgar Allan Poe, and each movement is after one of his most famous pieces. And we talked earlier. I also happen to be a Poe nut, and you and I know that he was also a scientist, non parallel. That he did ascend in a balloon. He did all of his adventurous tales are based on his own scientific study. So he was just an absolute genius, and totally understood by his merchant stepfather.
Yes.
And then whatever the horror is of his death. But you have I feel very powerfully about American composers choosing American subjects.
Mhm.
The Raven, Annabelle Lee, The Telltale Heart. You want to give us an overview, and then I'll go to my stream of
Sure.
consciousness.
Sure. This was actually Charlotte Good, the violist on this recording, is actually another one of my bestest friends. And she is also a gothic nut and a fellow autistic. And she was like, oh my gosh, we need to collaborate. We need to do this for viola. And I'm like, yes. So I started out with the Raven, and she debuted that at a recital. And then I was like, okay, we need to come up with two other movements to finish it out. And the thing I love about the recording of this, again, this is so her. The viola part is so her. The subject matter is so her. And then I was lucky enough to be able to fly out with her to Boston to have her record it for Parma. So that day I went to Salem after we recorded it. So like, it was perfect.
You mean the Witch Town or Salem, Oregon? The Witch
Oh,
Town.
no, the Witch Town. Yeah,
Okay,
the
gotcha.
Salem, Massachusetts.
So
yeah.
that was your Poe inspired you to go to the seat of evil.
Exactly. Exactly. It was so good.
That's great. Let's see. Well, what I have to say is here, we're looking at the first movement, the Raven. First of all, a fascinating piano introduction. That really nails the interest immediately because it hints at mystery. And then it's followed by the viola's intensely Poe-ish colors, right? And temperament. So, congrats to your friend. It's a beauty, again, of narrative imagination. A wonderful piece of writing for viola. It is virtuosic.
Yeah, it is. It is. I won't play it on my viola. I'll let somebody else do it. I'm not that good.
I see. Well, okay. Everything violist looks for in a recital piece is what I have here. And it's romantic. There are romantic bits in here. Some hair-raising Twilight Zone intervals between notes, if that makes any sense. Thrilling, spooky, mysterious, as was the man. Nice new idea. That roiling keyboard stuff, I say, toward the end of the piece. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I have to re-listen.
Oh, yeah.
Under viola, that middle and low register as it goes lower. Annabelle Lee.
Oh, I love
it's so
that
gorgeous. That movement is just
so beautiful.
Gorgeous.
It's one of my absolute favorites. And the poem too is just absolutely. It really struck me.
It brings you to tears, really. That poem.
It really does. I really wanted to capture that, like, complete childlike innocence, just absolutely purest childlike innocent love of a little boy and a little girl, and then the angels cruelly take her away from him, and just that drama.
And that's the true story, isn't it? Doesn't he married his wife she was 15, and then did she die? I can't quite remember.
I don't remember. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up.
So we just missed the good parts that neither of us can remember. Anyway, but I think there's something about that. In other words, what I'm trying to say is Annabelle Lee speaks to a very personal experience.
I do know this was his last poem that he wrote before he died.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, yeah, that's also a very haunting little tidbit. So, I love this movement so much. It was the hardest to record, too, because it's deceptively simple. But it's because it's kind of like Mozart in that way, where it's so simple and exposed that the violist has to be really careful and really in tune. So it took us a little bit longer to do this one.
Nice. Yeah, it's just a beauty. I call it magical writing. Exceptionally sensible.
Thank you.
And I think I had another word in mind. I'll think of it when I get to the review. Okay, The Telltale Heart. Let me start, okay? Sufficiently terrifying, I say, the intro. Sufficiently terrifying. Very imaginative character development. It's exactly creepy enough to fit the narrative, because that is that narrative, the pulsing, the kicking, the cat, right? And the floorboards of these kill. I mean, it's a ghastly story. Then the beginning of real paranoia. I mean, you describe this tale very well. Go ahead.
Thank you. This one, I decided the best way to put it together was to take the story apart and make each of the sections of music a section of the story. So it's probably the most narratively accurate of the three movements.
that makes good sense to me.
Yeah.
And
And in the music, each of the section headings has a little quote from the story, so you can kind of tell where you are in the story. But yeah, the idea of just, I wanted the opening theme that the viola starts playing is supposed to be sort of the love theme of that the narrator has for his master. I loved the old man, but it was his eye, so it's this really creepy, it's a love song, but that's twisted. It's got
aren't they
something
all?
off. Yeah, it's got something off with it. So that's where it opens, and then from there, then I get into the part where it's for 7 nights. He peeks in at the bedroom, and so that section's like in 7/4 or something like that. It has odd.
Nice.
Yeah, it's asymmetrical. So again, it feels a little off,
And the little sticks about the heartbeat taps on
and
the
then
fiddle, stuff like that.
yeah, exactly. And then little answering in the piano, boom, 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 kind of thing, But yeah, and then you hear him murder him. But then
Yeah, I call it shades of the shower scene in Psycho.
yeah, exactly.
Brava!
And then
I say
yeah,
after that, by the way. Brava.
thank you. Yeah, and then you just get, like you say, the paranoia as the cops won't leave, but the narrator keeps hearing the heartbeat and he can't get away from it, and he just has to give up.
And indeed, it's an internal conflict.
Yeah.
That's the order of the soundscape. This conflict, this internal conflict that becomes, insupportable, with a disturbingly deliberate ending. I'll have to go listen to it again. I'm trying to remember what was that disturbing ending, but anyway, it's so well done. So that's a beautiful sonata, and as I mentioned, here it is. It's a viola sonata. It's tough. Well, at a certain level, violists want it to be so. It's not inaccessible at all. It has a tremendous connection to America and American history and American art and literature. It's just a beautiful sonata, and it sounds so beautiful. The writing is so gorgeous. So take note, everybody. Nevermore for viola and piano. Okay, and then now the last, whatever, the grand finale on your CD, the Dark Glass Symphonia, We See Through a Glass Darkly, for orchestra from 2017. And you want to, well, hang on, I've got a quote here. Built upon an integrated set, here you go again. Built
I love patterns.
That's why I pulled it. Because in all of my life in the arts and even at college, these things never came up in my experience. She says, confidently, built upon an integrated set of hexachordal formulae, end quote. I say to myself, please explain, you will. Then you go on, free atonality with modal harmony. Okay. In doing so, it is meant to represent the enigmatic and ongoing emotional flux of the soul. Your turn. while I wipe my head here. Go ahead.
So this is another, what started out as just a love affair with patterns. And one thing, I'm not a major post-tonalist, I can tell from the accessibleness of my music, but I do love some of the number patterns that come about from post-tonal exercises. And hexachordal combinatoriality is one of my favorite ideas.
Let me stop my eyes from rolling. Hang on. Okay, I'm back.
Plus I just love saying it, hexachordal combinatoriality. Yeah.
I bet when you have students, they just sort of collapse.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, okay,
sure.
Learn how to say it, you're going to impress all your friends.
But then again, formulae is rather a tough one, too.
It's very pompous sounding. Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. It's built upon the 12-tone ideal, but it breaks up the 12 tones into 6 tones, hexachords. So each of the hexachords has its own unique intervallic character to it.
Okay.
And so in the same way that you can take, kind of the same way where I cheated with Dodecafunky, where I took segments of it and transposed it, it's kind of like that, but I did less cheating. The hexachords kind of do their own cheating. Because you can take one part of the tone row and then take the second half of it and flip it or reverse it or all that kind of stuff. And then if you break them down into numbers, you can add them up into cool combinations and things like that. So that's what this was. Is this piece was sort of a play on that and seeing what I could do with it, and that's how I developed the main themes. What you really hear it come out, especially in the little woodwind stuff that goes on
Gotcha.
throughout the top. That's really where it shines. But it really is woven into
Where
even.
the row shines, you can really kind of
Yeah,
discern
the
the row.
hexachords.
And
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Gotcha. Sorry, hexachords.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
well, you must have been in just a complete. You must have been in heaven putting this piece together.
It was fun. It was very, very fun. And again, and I don't know how my brain does this, but what starts out with a whole bunch of numbers and patterns usually comes out as something really lovely that I continue to love listening to.
Well, guess what? That's exactly the whole point of the genius of autism. Hello.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah. Well, that's another
but
favorite.
you just exactly described what we've been kind of talking about.
Yeah.
Look, that autism is just different.
It is.
There's some anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well, and that's another thing that kind of shines through with this orchestral piece too, is that one of the comments sometimes I get from other people is, oh, why can't you just have the instruments all stacked up on top of each other? Why can't they all play at once? And I'm like, I just don't like that. So I like to have the layers.
Sure.
Somebody's always doing something, and so there's kind of a medievalness to it, going back to that old polyphony idea, but then I'll integrate it with these numbers and patterns, and it just I love seeing it layer.
Speaking of layering, did I hear?
Yeah.
I see in my notes here. You have, I believe, explained all of the above about the hexachordal, et cetera, but I see here something about. Please explain a lovely. I'm looking at the beginning here, but I see something about. With winds and is there any kind of pyramid being constructed? A sound pyramid at all somewhere in the beginning of that piece?
Yeah.
Is that the right word, or is it dumb? A stupid word?
No, it's not stupid. I like to call it a waterfall. Where, yeah, the hexachordal.
So I got the idea.
Yeah.
Of we're creating it.
Yeah, the hexachordal pattern is there, but what I do is I pass it starting from the top and have it kind of trickle down like that.
So pyramid
and so
is
you
not
get that.
Quite the right way of describing it, but I was hearing a very specific concept. And of course, thinking pyramid, I'm describing it as from the bottom up, but you've just described it as from top trickle down, if you will forgive the expression. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see, a lovely little brass tune I'm hearing in there somewhere. I'm hearing cinematic moments. Of course, it's an orchestral piece. I'm sure you really got your teeth into that one in terms of orchestration. Let's see, lovely wind section work, as we've discussed, nicely orchestrated.
Thanks.
Hang on, then I'll get through it, and you can kind of wind down the description of this piece. Okay, wonderful colors, and so just the usual. It's brilliant and wonderful, and very accessible, and a beautiful, beautiful orchestral piece of what I can't remember, 7 minutes or something?
Yeah, it's only like 7 minutes or so, which I have found again economically and just competition-wise.
That's exactly right.
People like shorter pieces.
That's kind of why I asked, because then the next question is how, because I'm again thinking collegiate orchestras.
Yeah.
Many of many of which are really brilliant, as you very well know. But the point is, is this a piece that can be put on the stands and put together by a qualified?
Probably.
I would think so.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's really not that complicated.
And then let's see, and then as we've discussed, there's that thematic return. That the whole thing does a perfect arc and out. So there you go. And what else? Anything else before we kind of go back and
I just really love the very, very ending of it when I first put it together, and to me it evoked sort of almost this organ-like texture.
Ooh.
With I just love the resonance.
Let me just wheel back down there, see if I
see
if I caught any of that. Hang on a second, because I'm curious now. Just to see. Fast section with percussion, that's toward the end. I see more complicated in narrative in terms of just the construct of the piece. Definitely descriptive, martial. It's also, I want to. It's all. Oh, it's almost too classical. I say to myself. Remember, this is just
Uh-huh.
off the top of my head here,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but perfectly accessible. Yeah, forgive me. It
It's not a
started.
dirty
That's why
word.
it's a perfect piece for a college orchestra if it's
Yeah.
in that sphere of capability.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah, the ending I also kind of that little fast march like
yeah.
scherzo thing. I kind of
Good.
had a
That's
like
good.
a Russian romantic vibe almost, or like early 20th century Russian vibe, almost like kind of Shostakovich is esque, or
I was, you know, I mean, a huge question mark was starting to rise out of my head there. And I think the Shostakovich-ish
yeah,
bit that I helped
exactly.
make that all make sense. Entirely new bit of what sounds a recap as we discussed. So I think we've done a pretty good job of getting through stuff here.
Hmm.
Where are we? Do you want to do a grand farewell and we'll
Sure.
end this? Actually, we should. It's like an hour plus, so it's time to shut this thing down. All right, let me
Sounds
shut
good.
it down. I'm the host after all. What a great talk we've had. Um, and I think just anybody can pick up that the world of our profession, of our music making, is the world at large. I mean,
Hmm.
we speak to the wonderful, fascinating world around us. That's the whole idea of being a creative person. So again, wonderful chat with composer Sarah Wallin Huff, and we're talking about your 2023 Navona release. It's contemporary classical chamber music for diverse instrumental combinations. You've heard this before. It's called Shards. But don't worry, anybody. It's fine. And wonderful pieces that as we've discussed as we went through, are chamber works, and then of course the orchestral piece at the very end. But this is music that should be heard a lot more, and is not off the top of the charts of virtuosity to put together. It's just good, solid, wonderful music making with enough virtuosity to keep those of us. Why did I say those of us who are gifted busy? But you know what I'm trying to say before I'm going to
Yeah.
shut my mouth up here. Anyway, great fun chatting with you. Again, all of this is going to go up at performingartsreview.net. And what goes up first will be the video interview, and then I'll follow with that.
Cool.
So,
Well,
okay.
thank you so much. I'm really flattered, that you reached out.
Well, I'm flattered that I heard what I heard. I'll tell you, because it's always a gamble. I sort of
True.
just pick up whatever, and I thought I've never heard of this thing. Well, who is this person, and what is that stuff? And that's what got us started. It's been a tremendous treat, a
Cool.
really
Thank you.
important and a very important CD you put out. So congratulations all around. Okay,
Thank
we're
you.
done. Okay, bye.
All right.